Welcome, 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 one and all. We'll give everyone 30 seconds for the troops to roll in, and then we'll get this party started. All right, Tim, one last hit of caffeine, and away we go.
There we go.
Well, welcome, y'all to Escaping Manual Incident Mayhem. Just like Allstate, it is mayhem out there. I want to help you control it. But better than the Allstate guy, we've got our very own longtime friend, Tim Brewster from National Interstate. Tim, thank you for being a special guest and joining us today.
Appreciate you asking me to join you. Looking forward to today's session.
So, Tim, it is mayhem out there, and what we have heard and learned over the years is you and I have been playing ball for about a decade. We're old men now, and things have just gotten way more expensive over the last couple of years. And something, whether it's just general, our customers, your customers, people are asking us, "Man, I'm playing, I'm performing. Why is my insurance going up, even though I might be performing?" Can you just share with the troops out here what the heck is going on?
Absolutely. Not only is it a challenging environment for the motor carriers, it's a challenging environment for insurance carriers. In 2024, the combined operating ratio for insurance carriers that were writing commercial auto was 107, meaning on the commercial auto line of business, carriers were losing 7 cents on the dollar. So it's challenging for all of us. And that being said, I do see flat renewals out there. But on the flip side, I see single digit renewals, double digit renewals. And I always explain best in class operators are going to get best in class pricing across the board. And we could spend the next 30 minutes discussing what's driving all of these costs, but we'll really focus in on some of the categories that you have outlined above. So number one is social inflation, but that really goes along the lines of the litigious society as well. So what social inflation is, it is loss costs that exceed, call it economic inflation. And there are many factors that are feeding into social inflation. One is the litigious society. We're seeing more litigated claims today than we've ever seen, and there are a variety of reasons for that. In 2023, plaintiff attorneys spent more than $1 billion on TV advertisements. That excludes what they spent on those billboards that you see regularly on the highways. So there's just more awareness about litigation. And if anything, the public almost looks at it as a social good. Litigation is a way to punish wrongdoers. So you've got juries and the public that have distrust in corporations and motor carriers, which typically is going to lead to a larger award if something is litigated. But also when you think about social inflation, it's desensitized to the value of money. We were just talking about this prior to the call. I think it's Devin Booker's that just extended his agreement with the Phoenix Suns for 2 years, and it's $145 million. So when people hear about $1 million or $2 million verdict, they don't even think it's a lot of money because they're hearing about a professional athlete that just signed a 2 year extension for $145 million, which is wild. So you have all of those factors that are feeding into increasing costs. But also when you think about medical costs, you're seeing more TBI, soft tissue injuries than you've historically seen. You've got more advanced procedures, but the more advanced procedures are costing more. So that's driving costs of claims and losses for everyone. And we're seeing more total losses than we've historically seen because you've got an aging, call it fleet across the United States, but also the repair costs are skyrocketing because technicians, their wages are going up, parts are more expensive. There's a lot of uncertainty due to the potential tariffs that are going to come into play. What's that going to do to the cost to purchase parts, to repair things? But also the vehicles we have are so technologically advanced now with ADAS. It's just resulting in longer repair time and more expensive repairs. So that's really what's driving the costs across the board for all of us, not only the motor carrier, but for the insurance carrier.
So, Tim, thank you for the definition, like the specificity there, that it's no one thing. that's driving all this. And when you look at that, right, there's you're gonna be like, well, you put your hands up and say, well, shit, what am I gonna do to combat all this stuff? But there is stuff you can control. And that is things that, we've been listening to you and your team over the years. And so as we were trying to carve out what could we do in this process to help and actually control against that backdrop, that's not a very fun backdrop. And we brought it down into three components. So I thought maybe we could break those down together. So the first is fast triage, and the reason we put mobile is because accidents don't always happen 9 to 5. They happen at any time. So let's just break that down. Why is it so critical to do a fast triage and take action quickly for the motor carrier?
We preach this every day to our clients. Report it as quickly as you can to the insurance carrier because we're the experts when it comes to handling one of these commercial auto losses. Not only report it quickly, leverage the right reporting method. We see motor carriers that call everything in that has any type of bodily injury exposure, where we also see motor carriers where they'll email it in and it's a catastrophic loss. Well, if it's emailed in, it's going to take us longer to respond from an insurance perspective, and we're less likely to have the ability to deploy cost containment strategies. It's amazing how quickly people are becoming attorney repped in today's day and age. Typically, if we see a claim attorney repped, it's happening within 48 hours, meaning if we don't have the ability to learn about that loss immediately and strike rapport with the claimant and to potentially try to settle it, if it becomes attorney repped, it's going to be a long drawn out loss and it's going to end up probably costing at minimum 3 or 4 times more. So we want to know about losses immediately. Sometimes carriers think they're best equipped to manage that loss, but we handle thousands upon thousands of losses a year. We're the team that you should be reporting it to.
So Tim, amen to that on getting to the claimant or that other party quickly. I think what I've seen and heard over the years from the cheap seats is that when that other vehicle feels like they're actually going to get taken care of, and the company, if we're wrong, we're going to own it and make it right. Or even if we may not be wrong or it's a little gray, we're still going to make sure that they get taken care of. Then they don't bother to call Morgan and Morgan because they recognize, well, I'm going to be paying a percentage of that. So if I feel like I'm getting taken care of, I don't need to go through the pain of bringing on a lawyer. Now, there's always going to be some people that are annoying, right, that are going to be fixated on that. But the majority of people, if you take care of them, they'll be easy to work with. Is that fair?
100%. We've got a quick strike initiative here at National Interstate where we try to settle losses that liability is not disputed as quickly and as cost effectively as possible. And when we can make contact with that claimant, build rapport, we have a high success rate for settlement. And that's before it becomes attorney repped. Because again, once it becomes attorney repped, there are a lot of things that are outside of our control, and it's just going to drive the expense associated with that loss.
So same vein, moving into process management. Tim, what we're referring to there is just being organized. And what we've seen is you talk to enough people in the game, they're like, yeah, we get the information, we get everything most of the time, but there's usually like one or two where that CEO or CFO has like that dollar figure tattooed on the back of their eyes because they remember that they didn't get that one piece of information. That's how they got hurt. So, or getting National Interstate the information quickly. So I don't know if you got stories or just want to double tap the importance of just being organized to make sure you get every data every time and moving it to the right person.
It's kind of like the old adage, is it better to have safety policies and not follow them, or is it better to not have safety policies whatsoever? And I view that as both options are terrible. You need to have a consistent process in place that you can execute on every time you have a loss. When a loss happens, stress is high. It's easy to overlook things. So that's why you need a formal process you can consistently execute on, because when you digress from your process, that's when you get yourself in trouble. And unfortunately, you see a lot of that take place in the market because they're not experts at losses. And that's a good thing, because if our
Right.
motor carriers are experts in it, that means they're having a lot of losses. And they don't want that to be the case. So to your point, structure and consistency are key.
And what we'll share is how we leaned on you guys to help us build the structure. And to your point, we don't want safety directors being all stars at this management because it means they're doing it every day. And same thing with drivers; they should be even worse at accident management because if a driver's really good at managing accidents, they're a problem for you. They keep having accidents.
100%. Something as simple as a dispatcher, director of safety, a driver having a checklist for what to do when in an event helps, because then they can go through that list and say, okay, did I do these 10 things? Yes, perfect.
Right, right. So, Tim, on risk management, what are some best practices you see out there, or things you wish every one of your customers was doing to not just be playing defense on accident day, but preventing accident day from happening?
Yeah. We can talk all day about proactively managing a safety program by leveraging strong hiring practices, telematics data, defensive driving. But really, when we talk about accident response and leveraging the data, you see a lot of motor carriers that still have things within paper files or within Excel documents. It's hard to weaponize that data if it's fragmented throughout an operation. So the best in class carriers, they're centralizing all of their loss data and they're capturing granular information, meaning what was the length of employment at time of loss, time of day, how many hours was this driver into their shift when the loss happened. Because if you have that data, you can weaponize it and then put preventative measures in place to reduce the likelihood of a loss in the future. We've had clients where they've identified most of our losses are within the first 2 or 3 months of employment. Well, that leads them to evaluate their hiring practices, their onboarding practices, how are they monitoring people throughout the first 90 days. So if you have the data, leverage it to better control your outcomes in the future.
So, Tim, spot on, and that's exactly what we heard and saw out there in the streets when we were talking with our customers was you can't weaponize it if it's hidden. And so, in that spreadsheets is a very intentional plural because we would see like the incident spreadsheet and maybe the financial spreadsheet. And those two things weren't talking to each other. So you couldn't really put the story together. And then when you got to go to your inbox for some communication and some other drives for some folders, your teams, I think one of our customers loving called it Teams Hell, trying to find where all this stuff is. And it just makes you got these disparate, unconnected spots. And so when your data is across multiple places, you can't weaponize it, as you said, because it's buried. And hopefully it's not paper, but we know there's a lot of paper out there. But even if you're digital and it's living in a Teams drive, you can't do anything with it, right? It's still buried in there. So that was what we kind of the ingredients we saw that we was like, okay, hey, we may not be able to control social inflation. We may not be able to control that a windshield is now $10,000 because of the sensors and the systems in there, but we might be able to help with these things. And so when we talk about fast and mobile triage, what we did was put three real standards in there of controlling the narrative, making it easy to collect data, and quick claim submission. So Tim, control the narrative actually came from a coworker of yours, Kent Miller, that what he told me was, and I've heard it from him and other experts in the field, is you in safety want to control the narrative. And that again, the driver is not good at having accidents. So they may not know what is the right thing to say, do, document. And so you don't want the driver typing, recording. You want to control the narrative. Tim, anything to elaborate on that, for, why it's so important for people in safety to control the narrative?
I would say, to your point, losses don't happen often. So if you have a structured approach, you're going to collect information, you're going to know who's responsible for communicating. You want the appropriate facts of loss to make it to the insurance company. The last thing you want is misleading facts of loss that automatically result in a poor jumpstart to the investigation. So to your point, control the narrative, tell the proper story that you want to tell. Otherwise, someone's going to tell it for you, and the facts probably aren't going to be accurate.
Right, right. And so, point about easy data collection. Tim, we studied the National Interstate FNLO, the first notice of loss form, and we saw some information in there. We thought, okay, this is what's pertinent. This is what that strike team needs to know, and that make it easy for you to quickly capture it and send it over and that was the idea with the one click was on your phone, right? It could be 3 a.m. Tim, we got a buddy who told us a story where he had a call of an accident while he was in the deer stand out in the sticks, and he was about 3 hours away from a laptop, which meant, and as you know, that clock starts ticking, takes him 3 hours to get it going, then we got a problem. All of a sudden, Morgan & Morgan might be involved, or the Hammer or Misney or wherever you're at. And so what we're starting with, y'all, is to be able to send this information over to National Interstate. The other logo you see there is a unrelated third party, a TPA that we partner with, that give them, these two people, information, or anyone you're working with, quick information from the scene. So here's what these are actual screenshots, y'all, of what's coming and what is live. So on the left-hand side here, because it's coming from Driver Hub, we know your roster. So you're gonna be able to select the driver and then default to the date and time of where you're at, because we're hoping, right, Tim, that the driver called it in right then and there. They're not waiting a week later, right? So it should be then. And the ability for you to control the narrative here in the description, right? You got your earbuds in, you're on speaker as you're typing this in. That's the vision, so you can control the narrative. Then we start getting into details to the facts of the loss, a little bit more specific. And this is really driven by the National Interstate's FNLO form. And if you look at that FNLO form, you're going to see some information on there like policy or address. We're not going to ask you to type those things in because you're going to have that done and we'll send it over. So National Interstate will know that information, but we don't need you typing stuff that you can do during a quiet moment. We want you just focused on what you need to gather at the scene. And so understanding, really importantly, very intentional, we're putting injuries up front because we know that's, if someone's hurt, we got to move really, really quick. And then getting the vehicle information, typing in the address, or if it's mile marker 13 on the Ohio Turnpike. And as you're trying to figure out the spot, just like you're telling your Uber driver that, no, I'm actually on this corner, you can do that with the drag and drop. And then we start breaking it down. And so getting into risk prevention mode, we want to know what the category type is. That also can be cost control. So what category down here, if it's a backing incident or a head-on collision, we're going to start to things that Tim's strike team can start to make information decisions on of, oh, we got to go quick, or hey, this can, we can work this through the list. And then going down the line, again, just pulled from the FNLO form just to try to make quick triage decisions on how fast do we need to go. And really important, assigning too. So we know that things don't get done when it's when it could be multiple people's job. What is the next step and who owns it? So we don't want to be any two infielders watching the ball fly between and critical information while the ball falls down between us, right? Who owns it? Is it Tim? Is it Scott? Who's got the next step? And then if you see here, view add photos. When we talk with our friends in safety, what we see is usually if you pull up their phone, you go to their photos, you're going to see pictures of the grandkids, the last deer that they shot, and then a mangled car. And then that's the cycle, the carousel of photos. So as the drivers are texting you images from the scene, that you can add them, just like you're sending the picture of your deer to your buddies or bragging about your grandson. You just select that and add it to this form here. So intentional low-tech solution, because again, we're in crisis mode. So you and the driver do what you normally do, which is take a picture, text, and send it in. And then what we're exploring with some of our customers right now, have given us access, thank you much to the people on the call, within the telematics systems. So things like vehicle trailer information, we'll be able to pull that from there because it's known. And then some people are using Samsara workflows if the drivers are using their mobile app, that they could take the pictures there. So we don't want to have the drivers do redundant information. If that's your workflow, let's stick with your workflow and capture the information and suck it down and put it in the system. And so that's how we're looking at it. And then the next question would be, what can we grab from the video footage? How can you ship it over? And those are API questions that we're working with customers right now and figuring what's possible, what's not. But these big three, National Interstate has got programs with them, and they're really the big names out there with the best APIs. And from a tech standpoint, that's what we care, is like, are easy to work with, easy to get at the data and push them in. So that's why we're starting here. So prioritized process management. I'm using the word prioritized all over this presentation with a lot, with a lot of intent, because what we saw out there was a bunch of spreadsheets. And Tim, I don't know if you ever sit on a claims review meeting, but a lot of times it is just like we're going down the spreadsheet. Well, what's the order of the spreadsheet? When they were entered into it. So we're just going on the date. It's not based on severity. It's not based on what's going to hurt us the most. And so that's when I talk about prioritized task management here. This is what we're saying with starting your meetings with the highest severity and working your way down. And in addition, that when people are working down the spreadsheet, well, you can't see the pictures. You can't see the video. You're like, well, where is that? Again, we're going back into Teams hell. So if we're working off a system that's got everything, and we're going off what could be most severe and working our way down, this is really how we want to help you start those claims, that Friday meeting or that Monday meeting, whatever you do to review the week, that using this as the tool. And then documentation. So Tim, right, if it didn't document, it didn't happen. When you get, and I think the mindset we want to have is, if you're on the deposition chair, how are you going to look? And if you behave that way, you are going to reduce your chances of actually ending up on the deposition chair, because you'll have your act together. And so what we've done is areas for you to review your discipline policy, to log face-to-face coaching. Hey, I had the chat with Tim and I assigned him some training. And so with our launch of the training marketplace, we've expanded into content providers like Samba, Driver Education Network, etc. And Tim and I are working on allowing National Interstate customers as well. So you have it all in one spot. And you can prove that, hey, I did my due diligence. Because the worst, Tim, I'm sure you got stories where people may have done it, but they didn't document it. So it looks like we're just sending bad apples back on the road when that may not be happening in reality. So you mind just sharing like the importance of the documentation?
I'd agree. Every day you see where a process isn't documented or someone didn't follow through with it. And if you spoke with two different attorneys, you'd probably get two different responses. Some attorneys would say less is more, don't have a ton within that accident file, where other attorneys would say, you want the information, but you also want to be able to tell a good story. This is why you have the information. This is how you followed through with training, coaching the driver to success. So any documentation you have, make sure that you just follow through with what you're supposed to do, and you will have a much better outcome. It's what I explained earlier. Having policies and not following them, or not having them at all. Both are terrible options. Have something that is manageable that you can consistently execute on.
Amen to that. And Tim, you at your safety summons for National Interstate, a couple times you brought Joe Freed, who's on the plaintiff side. And what he talks about is, that's how he gets people, right? That's how he nails them, is if you're not following, like to your point about those two options, both are bad, and he's going to get you for it. And on the counter side, there's a guy, Doug Marcello, out there that's like putting ostrich principle isn't a sound policy. Well, I'm not going to look at the data. Well, a guy like Joe Freed's going to say, no, this is available. This is best practice. And just because you're not looking at it, I don't care. I'm still going to kill you, right? And he does, right? And that's when he comes to the safety summits talking to your church, he says, this is the playbook. I'm going to show you the playbook, and I hope you follow it. But here's the thing, I know people aren't going to do it. So he's happy to share with people, the world, what he's going to do, knowing he's still going to win, which is really this is control what you control, y'all. You can win against Joe Freed, and he'd like you to win, beat him, truly.
To your point, Scott, a lot of it's low hanging fruit. They leverage your own practices against you because they find gaps where you didn't follow through with something. And these plaintiff attorneys are more sophisticated than ever. They know that telematics data exists, your own internal hiring guidelines, your accident guidelines, your training programs. So just make sure you have stuff that you can follow through on.
Yeah. Yep. So Tim, on that note, trying to be organized. What I've done here is take a couple screenshots for people to see the standardization. So if you see at the top here, we got incident details, company vehicle, other vehicle, people, property, and it goes on, and it was to expand upon the more detailed version of what you'd like, Tim, from the claims perspective. And, intentional, we didn't make a lot required because you're building this information as you get it, right? And so one thing you'd say, Tim, is when you get the information, ship it. Don't wait for perfection. Get it started with what you got. And so, but by seeing here, if you see a blank, that's something that you need to be filled, and that's something we want to capture to your attention. So if you don't have it, do what you need to do to go get it. And I highlighted police report and other vehicles for two reasons. And Tim, it's just me listening to you over the years, that these are things that sometimes don't get captured at the scene and can cause delays And so we wanted to ensure that people got up front. So you may not be able to get, depending on the state, you may not get the police report right away. But if you get the officer's badge number, then your team can, go find the information. Do you mind expanding a little bit about, what I hit on and why it's so important?
Yeah, so it's pretty common not to have a police report readily available after an accident. It's pretty common to see it take, 2, 3, 4 weeks for us to be able to obtain a police report because the agency may take a while to process it. When you talk about catastrophic losses, sometimes it'll take more than 6 months to get that police report. The reason we like the police report when we get it, it confirms the facts of loss and the parties that were involved in the incident. And it's sometimes the first formal document that comes out of an accident. But the reason that we like our insureds to try to capture information for other parties involved is, as I told you earlier, we're seeing sometimes when things are attorney repped, it happens within 48 hours. So if we have to wait 3 weeks to confirm the parties involved in a loss because of a police report being delayed, we're already 3 weeks behind. So if a client can get us license plate number, driver's name, driver's phone number, we're going to be able to establish rapport immediately with that other party, which is going to keep overall costs down.
So and that was, thank you. Perfect segue to why I have other vehicles here is for that reason. So that third party, that other vehicle, and sometimes, Tim, it can be awkward for the driver in an accident, right, to go up and talk to them. But if we can get that information, right, you just need the information so the strike team can do their job. And if it is awkward or they don't want to talk to them, that if you at least get the license plate, right? I'm kind of going bare minimum and working your way up. So the more information, the better. But if we had license plate, your team can do their thing. And if you had a phone number, you'd be tickled to death.
Something is better than nothing. Get us some information so we can jumpstart that investigation.
Yeah. So when we talk about priorities process management, this is what we're talking about is ideally you'd have everything. We recognize that's the perfect world. You don't always get everything. So when you do, what is the bare minimum? Work your way there, right? Let's get that police officer's badge number so that Tim's team can at least go find the police report and not have to wait 3 weeks. More importantly, can we get who's in the other vehicle? Can we get their phone information so we can establish rapport so they don't answer the call from Morgan to Morgan, or don't go looking for the hammer because they feel like they're going to get taken care of. Y'all, we saw a lot of silly administrative hitting your head against the wall on sharing documents. And I think that's probably twofold. One, these are big files because we're talking videos and images, and there's a ton of them. And part of the reason there's a ton of them is that y'all have been trained, from National Institute to say when you think you're done taking pictures, take 100 more. And then when you're shipping them around the office, right, you're getting stuck, or trying to ship them to claims, you're getting stuck. So what we've done, and you may not want to ship everything, Tim, right? Control the narrative. Maybe there's one that doesn't make sense to ship or you don't. So what we've done is create a little media tab where the images that have come in, whether you did get a picture of the police report or you did get the other person's license information or crash, that you can select what you want to send over, leave what you don't. Hit the link there, copy link, and ship it on over. And it's just like a Dropbox, so that for the National Interstate team or anyone else, they hit that link, they hit download, and that can be for your adjusters. It could be for an attorney. Maybe you want to send some stuff to plaintiffs' counsel and play offense and say, "Hey, Joe Freed, we got everything here. In fact, we're looking pretty good. You sure you want to fight?" And then, or my favorite one, right? The boomer owner that can barely log into any system, but he can't access his email. And so if he wants to see some details, you can do so that way. So that's kind of the thought of the media file and how you would just simple stuff, share information across. All right, Tim, other things near and dear to your heart are cost reduction and risk prevention. And so cost reduction is, all right, we had the loss. What can we do to control it? And risk prevention is how do we prevent it from happening in the future? So I think I've hit the prioritize based on severity pretty hard, but I wanted to show at least what that looks like. And so if I'm looking at my dashboard here, the things I'd be curious if I'm a safety director, I'd probably start with what are my 6 claims? Because if it's an insurance claim, there's probably some money involved. And so I want to make sure I'm keeping tabs on that I don't have any outstanding to-dos, that I'm giving National Interstate everything they need. Maybe I'm looking at our total damages and are working our way down. And what happens there, if I click on that, say I click on that 6, what I get is for Driver Hub customers, what you're used to seeing is a little browser screen where you've got your list of the 6, and then you can drill into that detail page that I showed earlier. And so that's just kind of your navigation. When I talk about prioritize on severity is you can start your day there and work your way in the detail versus when was the last incident that somebody typed into the spreadsheet and working down. And then looking at trends. Tim, you hit on that a little bit earlier. I've heard stories as well from customers that realized there's a dangerous railroad crossing at a customer yard. It creates a blind intersection and they keep having an accident there. So if that happened 10 times before they realized it, if the data hits you in the face, can you prevent it after the second time? There's another example of a customer hauling fuel that you got to go all the way around the building in order to back because it's a really tight city spot. It's a very unique situation to that drop. Well, they realized they were having issues, but it took, kind of drivers talking to each other. So again, it took about 10 incidents. Well, if it hits you in the face, could you prevent it after 2 and go create your own content, your own course on this is how we drop to this fuel station in this city, specific to you. That's how you get your risk prevention hat on. Or one of my other favorites was a bus customer, Tim, that they kept hitting a rock at the Holiday Inn. And so they asked the Holiday Inn, can we move the damn rock? And they did. But it took crushing 4 buses in order to get there. So how can we save you a couple buses by not hitting those rocks at the Holiday Inn? And then a small little win for y'all, because it's an annual thing, is you got to report the accident register at the end of the year, and National Interstate also is interested in a copy of that. So by just flipping on DOT reportables, you've got all the column headers, and so by drilling in, right, you can hit export and away you go, versus trying to cobble together a spreadsheet, at the end of the year. So, Tim, I don't know if there's any other comments there or things you want to double click on that you'd like to make sure people are doing when they've got their risk prevention hat on, or controlling loss when it does happen.
I'd say number one priority is preventing the loss from happening. But if you have the loss, how do you learn from it and make your operation stronger?
Enough said. So tying it back up on controlling what you can control. So we can't control the cost of social inflation. The Devin Booker's getting $145 million 2-year extension, that the windshield's now $10,000. But you can control how quickly we report it. And the best thing you can do to prevent a couple zeros added to a claim is don't let Morgan & Morgan rep that other party. And so the faster you go and the more you make them feel warm and fuzzy that they're going to be taken care of, that's the best thing you can do. And these things about process management help you do that. And as Tim just said, and if you just prevent that day from happening, and it doesn't matter, we know that 80% of the time it's the four-wheeler's fault, but you still got to deal with it. And as Tim alluded to, in this country, you're the big bad corporation, and you are guilty until proven innocent. And so the best thing to do is not have the accident. And I know it's easy to say, but the more you're looking at it strategically, even if it's just not hitting that rock at the Holiday Inn 4 more times than you need to, is the best way to reduce the cost of all that. So before we get into Q&A, I get to play Oprah right now, and that is delayed Oprah. So unfortunately, can't reach underneath your seats right now for your keys to incident management, but Saturday, you can reach underneath your desk chair and get access to beta. So any customer here is welcome. You're in it. If you're on this webinar, you're in the beta. Thank you. And we really want to hear your feedback. And here's how. Within the product, you can drop us a note within the chat bubble on things you're seeing. And our product team really wants to meet with you and chat with you as you're going through it. So through your client success manager, get that time scheduled. We're gonna be hitting you requesting that time. Look, our methodology on beta here is we think what we have built is better than what we saw out there of your spreadsheets. And so that was why we shipped it. Now we know there's gonna be some rough edges, but we want to let you dictate when we get our sandpaper out, what are the edges that we smooth out. So we are begging for feedback. We're thirsty for it. And if you just got time to drop us a note, just drop us a note. And if you'd spend time with product team, we'd love to have you. So with that, Mr. Wayner, our MC, what questions have we got from the audience?
Yes, absolutely. So we've had a number of questions come in throughout this webinar that have been answered. So y'all, if you're looking for those questions specifically, pop on down to the Q&A part and you should be able to see the answered questions. But if not, I'll recap them right now. The first one though, Scott, for you is, will this upcoming incident reporting tool and avatar have an API link with National Interstate Copilot for claim reporting automation?
So out the jump, no, what we're doing to create the claim, as I was going with one click, is it's just following we're automatically sending an email to claims@natal.com, just like you would do today with the link of the information. Down the road, we absolutely see that opportunity, but that's for Tim and I to figure out, exactly what does that look like? What's the key information? But I think, Tim, we both be open to it as we start to explore and get further, but we thought, let's not let perfection be the enemy of progress. Let's get it going old school with a little email and work our way down.
I would agree. The MVP, let's get that out there and see how it goes, and then we'll expand.
Get some wins, prove some usage.
There you go. So another clarifying question. This is a tool for safety, not the driver. Is that right, Scott?
Correct. With a lot of intentionality going back to control the narrative. And so, again, the driver is not good at having accidents, right? We don't want them to be good at having accidents. And so we've actually had customers send drivers out forms and, to complete information. And while that's a feature that you could use in Driver Hub, why we're pretty strong on not recommending that is because we've been listening to our friends in the insurance space. And we want the best practices for you to control the narrative and collect that information, make it easy on the driver. The way the driver will be involved, though, in this process, something I didn't show on the screens was there's an opportunity to send out a template text. And the reason why we think that that's the best practice is, again, the driver's flustered. Tim, I know you've seen customers, you recommend that they've got whether it's a business card or it's in the binder in the glove compartment about what to do for accident procedures, a checklist. They could be frazzled. And so if you can send a template text in 140 characters, tell them what they need to do, going back to, hey, please go get a picture of that license plate, get the police officer badge, get the phone number of that other party. Just trying to condense down your accident checklist into a text.
Scott, another one from the screenshots, it looked like it was absent, but any thoughts on adding a vehicle tab or table as well? Year, make, model, VIN. Are those things included when you're in the claim submission or the incident submission process?
Yes, it is, because you need to know that information, tie that driver to the vehicle. So that's part of pulling in data from Samsara's, where we've started with that. And they've got that information because we know that National Interstate's going to need that information. So we did create spots for that data, and this opens up the home for the vehicle information. So we knew we needed to have it in order to have give National Interstate the information they needed. So it's absolutely a part of it.
Scott, you also mentioned that you can upload photos. Can I upload videos to this platform as well?
You can. So video, and I would say, whether that is the driver out doing this, right, surveying the scene, which could be helpful, or it's getting the snips from Samsara, or, downloading it, or whatever else. If you got a driver with the old home code recorder, whatever, however they can get the MP4 file, you can upload it.
Cool. Will we have the ability to send completed incident report to the driver for their signature?
Like hey, we had a little chat, and this is us, the time and date that we had the chat. Yeah, as a part of the coaching and training feature, it is. And for those of you using Driver Hub, you're used to sending candidates forms or employee forms for signature, and that can be if you want to have it where it's your signature as the manager and the driver's. So that one was actually an easy one because we already had the functionality that we were using for, say, annual reviews or the DOT application. So the functionality was already there. It's just what are the words you want to put on that form to document that you had the conversation.
So, Scott, will this only work if a customer has Samsara?
So out of the gate, that's where we're starting, just because of the most robust API on the that we're able to play with, and some where our customers are at. But no, down the road. So let's say you're using Netrodyne today. The only thing of not having integration would be, re-keying the information in, but the logos I showed there of Motive and Netrodyne are what we do with Samsara. We're planning on doing with those two as well, and really not discriminating. It's who do you use? Again, why we're prioritizing those is because their APIs are really strong, and when all customers need to do is give us their keys, and we could pull it. I know iRide's one's out there that's pretty robust API, so that's our approach, Mark, is not discriminating, welcoming all, and then creating, if we don't have the integration, allowing you to manually enter it, and then just building the line, right? We're still capitalism. Who's got the most demand out there, and we're going to start there and work our way down.
Got it. But you don't need a subscription to Samsara to use this tool, correct?
You do not, no.
Perfect. Okay. Is this an extra cost package? And what does Avatar Driver Hub do? Can you explain that a little bit, and how much does it cost?
Sure. So if you're a current Driver Hub customer, no extra dollars for you. It's included in the subscription. This is just another feature that we produce, and part of the reason you subscribe and pay us every month is that your expectations are we keep making the product better, and this is us making the product better. If you're not a Driver Hub customer, so what we've done is, we're out here looking for HR. How can we combine HR and safety in one spot for you? And this was a gap that we saw within the current product of managing driver recruiting, onboarding, DQ files, and safety in terms of training. And so this was a little gap that connected it all. So to answer that question, Mark, that's how we put it all in one spot. Was we saw people were working outside the system in spreadsheets, and we said, well, what do we need to do to make that go away? And that's how we built the feature.
Fantastic. I think that's all the questions that we've had. If there's any last call, we'll give it another 10 seconds to type in your questions.
One thing I saw there was a question about after hours reporting, for very serious crashes. Tim, I know that's important to you, that people still pick up the phone and do that. Do you want to just say that one more time to make sure?
Yeah, anyone that's a national interstate or vanliner insured, we want you to pick up the phone and call us immediately anytime there's severity associated with the loss. Anytime that there's BI exposure, we want to know about it. Please don't email it in, because we may get 100, 150 emails a day. So if we need to respond as quickly as possible, the phone is the most efficient process. And we've got representatives available 24/7. I'm sure our clients on the call, if they've experienced catastrophic after-hour losses, they've realized how quickly we respond, where within minutes, if not hours, at times we will have defense counsel on scene or accident scene reconstructionists. And we can't do that if it's emailed in.
And so, Tim, the thought there was that is absolutely the process, remains the process, and that shared file feature that I showed, that as that information comes in, that's how a national interstate customer would keep your team up to date as information comes in. So if they need a couple minutes to review the footage, they can send you that clip. If they need a couple minutes for the driver to send in pictures, or someone else to send in pictures, then that's how they could use that shared file system just to keep your team up to date of the latest information that they're getting.
That's all the questions.
Great. Well, appreciate everyone for joining in. And with Tim, a special shout out and thank you to you for the context of what's going on out there in the market, but just more importantly is the guidance to help us build this thing along the way. And the problems that you are the loss control expert, so making sure we build something that actually solves real world problems. It wouldn't happen without you, it wouldn't happen with your team, sharing those FNLO forms and breaking down and thinking critically about what is really critical. What do you guys really need, and helping us prioritize so that in the moment, the people on this call can select it and get over to you. So Tim, thank you for the help along the journey.
Welcome. Appreciate Appreciate the relationship. Y'all have a good day.
Thanks, y'all.